Workbooks are more complex than CSV files, so when I want to work with an Excel workbook with Power BI, I first need to make sure that any data that I want to import is formatted as a table. This is the Customer Catalog Requests workbook from the Exercise Files folder Chapter 2. This is not formatted as a table, and I know this because when I click in this data that could be formatted as a table, I don't get any new tabs on my ribbon for cables. Therefore, I want to format this as a table. The first thing I'm going to do is select it all, click in the upper left-hand corner, hold Ctrl and Shift and choose Right and then Down. There are all of the records in my table. And I'm going to choose Format as Table and really choose any of the formats. I'll select this one, why not? It says where is the data, it's the data that's selected. My table has headers, that is true. The first row is headers, I'm going to click OK. Having formatted this as a table, I now need to save it. I'm going to save it under another name in the same folder. I'm going to save this as Customer Catalog Requests Table. You don't have to do this. I'm doing it simply to keep these separate, and notice, as I said, because this is a table, I have a Table Tool Design tab right here that I did not have previously and don't have when I'm selecting a cell or group of cells that aren't in the table. Now let's go back to Power BI. I'm going to click Get Data. Files. And remember that if I want this data to automatically be refreshed by Power BI, I need to save this data in OneDrive for Business, OneDrive Personal, or SharePoint. So I'm going to do that this time so that I can illustrate how that works for you. I'm going to save this in OneDrive for Business. So let's go back to Excel. And let's go to File, Save As. I'm gonna save this in OneDrive Connect Eco. I could put this in a folder, but I'm simply going to save it right there. That's my OneDrive for Business. Click Save. Getting a list of available properties, content type definitions. And we're saved. And one way that I can tell that this is saved in the cloud is that my Save button in the upper left-hand corner is now a Save Synchronize button. And I'm going to close this file and return to Power BI. Now I'm going to choose OneDrive for Business as the location of my files. So it's one extra step. It would also be a good practice to get rid of the local copy of this file that's sitting on my desktop right now. It creates a possibility of confusion because now I have two copies of the same file. So if I'm going to store a file in OneDrive for Business and I have the exact same file somewhere else, getting rid of the somewhere else is a good idea. And Power BI is making the connection to OneDrive for Business. Every other time I do this, it will be faster than this first time. And here's my Customer Catalog Request table that I have selected. Click the Connect button, and I have two choices now. I can import the Excel data into Power BI, which is what I want to do to use it as a data set. Or I have the ability to bring this workbook into Power BI and be able to use it as I would in Excel online. Notice that if I bring in the entire workbook, I would then have to schedule a refresh. Which is something I can't do if I had connected to this file while it was stored on my desktop or elsewhere on my local drive. But here's the beauty, I don't want to connect. I want to import this, and when I do, it will automatically be refreshed from OneDrive. So any change that's made in OneDrive will be reflected here within the hour, if not before. I'm going to click Import. The file's being processed. How long that takes depends on how large your file is. Also how fast your network speed is. But size is going to be the biggest determinant. It says your data set is ready. I can click View Data Set, and in the right-hand side, here come my fields. City, first name, ID. Notice that the fields are being presented in alphabetical order. This is not the order that they are listed in the spreadsheet itself, so that we don't have to know what the original data set looked like to use it. You and I may actually wish that ID were first because it's the first field because we're used to using that Excel workbook. But remember that as we're working with Power BI, we're often creating data sets and reports and dashboards for other people to use as well. And they won't necessarily find a non-alphabetical sort order that looks random from their point of view to be helpful or useful. Notice now that we have two data sets. We have GDP Americas, which is the CSV file that we imported in a prior video. We have Customer Catalog Request Table, which we have imported here, and you might remember that we also connected to SaaS, Software as a Service. Why isn't that here? Because that didn't give us a data set. That gave us an app. This data set, Customer Catalog Request, will be updated every hour from OneDrive. This data set, which we imported from a local drive, not from the cloud, will only be updated if we delete and replace it. The Power BI set also has free samples that include data sets, reports, and dashboards. To load the samples, we'll go back to Get Data, and below Discover Content, notice Samples. Click the link for samples, and here's a list of all the different samples that are available. If you click the tile for a sample like Procurement Analysis, you get more information about it. Industry Sample Dashboard and Underlying Report, analyze manufacturing companies' spending on vendors. I'm going to click on Retail Analysis Sample. This is a retail sales data for items sold across two different chains, their multiple stores and their districts. This is real data that has been made anonymous. I'm going to connect to this sample. This retail analysis sample includes a data set, a report, and a dashboard, all three. If I click on the name of the report loads. Now notice at the same time the data set is also loading, so it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's on the way. The report comes first and then the data fills in, so if you have a slow connection, you'll actually watch it build as it just built out that territory and it's resetting based on the locations of the actual stores. So we get the visualizations, then the data to fill them in arrives. As with all of our other dashboards, reports, and data sets, this will be part of our workspace in Power BI as long as we don't remove it, which we could, of course, do by removing reports. For example, right here. But if you remove a data set, something different happens. If I indicate that I want to remove this data set, it says it will be permanently deleted, but so will all the reports and dashboard files that contain data from this data set. So I'm not going to do that. We're going to return to this report later in our course. Now that we know how to load a sample, if you're working along with me, I would encourage you to load this sample, Retail Analysis. Because I will be using it as a demonstration set in some of our upcoming work.